yeah, so those are kind of really two important things that I want the L&M family to know, as well as that part about being an optimist. That has really driven me for the last 4 or 5 years. Probably got me to the point where I'm willing to put it out there on a podcast, because you have to do that with some optimism, thinking, hey, I'm just putting this out here, and if one person listens to me, and that's been kind of the drive of my last 4 or 5 years of my career, is how can I help people? How can I help this next generation? How can I give them stuff? I just want to share. I want to help people. So that's what it comes down to. And if it's one person, that I'm fine with that. I'm good if there's one listener and it's my brother. As long as you can help one person at a time, that's the best thing that you can do in life.
Oh yeah, that's my buddy, Mr. James Gable, full of optimism and really out there working to make a difference in terms of communication. Got to check out his podcast, The Uncommon Communicator. They're currently dissecting the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which is a pretty darn good book. If you haven't checked it out yet, check it out. I just want to give you some insight as to how humble and awesome James is. He reached out to me kind of out of the blue. We had met way back in the day on a teleconference. And he reached out saying, hey, man, I'd like to get some time with you to talk about podcast stuff. And so we had a really great time talking over an hour. And I had a last minute situation come up that I really needed some help with. And I reached out to James like a day later, and I'm like, hey, bro, are you available? Because I got an opening and I'd love to celebrate you. And man, he jumped right on it. So James, thank you, bro. People need to know that James's mission is to help the next generation gain the skills needed to navigate and facilitate any conversation to mutual understanding. And he came to this through decades of experience in the industry and growing his career as foreman, general foreman, now he's general contractor. And in this conversation, he and I start talking about the toughest role in construction, which he and I both agree that is the foreman role. I've been a foreman. I still have scars from living through all that less than wonderfulness, but it was an important time for me to grow and develop as an individual. And it's woven throughout the conversation, but James really is focused on helping people understand why soft skills like communication are important for team members in construction. We like to call them soft skills, but they're really like power skills, the ability to listen with the intent to understand and the ability to communicate our thoughts and ideas in such a way that people can visualize them is a powerful skill and maybe underinvested in. Also want to give y'all a heads up that we have some, to quote Mr. Steve Turner, wicked cool ideas in the oven right now. Keep an eye out the week of January 12th. We're going to be live streaming with some teachers at a technical school. I hope to see y'all there. Shout out to all of our patrons that have been supporting this podcast. You all have contributed heavily to the increased quality of the visuals and some of the audio stuff. And for the rest of y'all, keep listening. We love y'all. And here we go. So here we are with Mr. James Gable, communication expert.
No, not in the job description.
I love it, man. So L&M family, want to introduce you to Mr. James. He just launched his podcast. Was it December 1st?
December 1st. Yes, sir.
The Uncommon Communicator.
That's right.
I got to listen. Man, I've said it the other day when we talked. I'm going to say it again. The music selection of the intro is like the coolest. Like I knew every single reference. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'm hip or we're just kind of from the same generation, but this is perfect. It was great.
And that's all my co-hosts. That he is a communications major. He studied this stuff. He's into the music. If I put my music in there, we wouldn't be talking about it. But it's all him, and yeah, he did a great job on that. Yeah.
Yes, and the two of you, I'll tell you this. I listened to both of the episodes this morning. 22, 23 minutes long. So, it's a manageable amount of time. Um, the dynamic between the two of you, there's he's referencing Pokemon,
I know.
and you're not talking about Pokemon, but it's like that's the realness of it, right? Like the
Sure.
generational difference, but still being able to communicate on a shared idea.
Right.
I think that's what's kind of standing out to me is the band of age groups that you can connect with, the two of you can connect with and serve. Um,
Right.
I'm really excited to see what you do with them. And so, how you doing, Mr. James?
I'm doing good. Hey, thanks for inviting me to the palatial studios of the Learning and Missteps. It's an honor to be here. Glad we found the time to do this.
Yeah, man, it is a crazy path. So you and I met as a result of a LCI COP for Denver, the Denver COP Lean Construction Institute. Um, I was co-facilitating a conversation on Gimbal Walks with Jorge Rincon. Shout out to Jorge, who's
Jorge.
I don't know if you know this, James, but he was the lean manager for Dallas, and now he is the regional lean manager for the central region there.
Oh, is
So
he the new Jesse? Is that what he
he's gonna
is?
be way, way better than what I was. But yeah, he backfilled the spot that I was in, and he's gonna take him to all new heights, man. He's a solid dude.
Well, it's fun to see just how different connections happen, right? That was a $5 1 hour Gemba walk class that I went to. Might have been 2 hours, $5. Like, are you guys making money off of that? I don't think so. Like,
Mhm.
you probably could have gave me $5. I would have went, but it was neat to go to that. And then I had a couple of my young guys, project engineers. I paid their $5 for them too. I didn't
Yeah.
even. It's too much work to put it on the company card. Like, you guys need to come to this too. And we sat in that thing, and that's that gets that start of we're definitely lean amateurs, lean apprentices. We're first year apprentices at trying to figure out lean. But that was one thing that, that was just that first connection, where
Yeah.
you meet Jorge, you meet hey, meet you, Jesse.
Yep. Yep.
So it's just kind of funny how all that stuff rolls around.
Yeah. It's an amazing world, and the social media space, the podcasting and live streaming and videos and like it has a profound effect on people. And one of the things I appreciate about you, James, is your positive message and the way you carry yourself, the way you show up. It's clear to me that um, you care about people, about investing in people. And we've all heard the language influencers. Um, and there are a lot of there's so many influencers out there, it's almost like whether you want to or not, you are an influencer. You remember Charles Barkley back in the day where there was all the media commotion that everybody was saying he's a role model and and he's like, I'm not a role model, and I kind of felt like I feel him, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but you kind of are, right? We've got to own the impact that we have on people. And I'm like, again, I want to say it again. So pleased to hear your podcast. You're out there sharing your voice, your thoughts, your message, and you're one of the influencers that I want to be associated with. And so I want to give you the uncomfortable opportunity to brag about yourself, James. So, what should the L&M family know about you, sir?
Yeah, and I know you asked that. That is tough. And when you become a general, a part of my story, and I'll share that, when we
Mhm.
want to talk about my career path. But you get into the world of, I went to the dark side of general contracting, and I was a industrial contractor, subcontractor for most of my life. I'm a millwright by trade. Went through
Nice.
the millwright apprenticeship. My dad's a millwright. My grandpa was a millwright at General Motors. My three brothers are all millwrights. So we're a
Wow.
construction family.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of us aren't all wearing blue collars anymore either, but my brother is a regional manager of the International Brotherhood of Carpenters. So
Ooh,
he's
okay.
over several locals, regions. That's a recent promotion for him. And just this has been in our family. It's in our family. That's who we are.
Yep. We
But I
know
want
about you.
L&M family to know is several things, and you brought it up. Optimist. Those are one of the things that I think I promote a lot now. I am an optimist. I'm not just a glass half full, but if that glass is a quarter full, then there's 75% more opportunity in that glass. That's the attitude that I take into problem solving, into just who I am and how I am. So that's kind of a key thing. I'm a family man. I've everything I've done in my career has been for my family, and I've done it in my own way, which is how we learned to do it. And when I say that, I've spent a lot, I've worked a lot of overtime. My first 11 years, I worked 2,600 hours a year. I worked
Mm.
every bit of overtime that I could work because I was the sole supporter of my family. We found it important that my wife was home with the kids, and that's we ate a lot of mac and cheese, and I worked a ton of overtime, and
Yep.
that's what I felt like I did for my family. I worked out of town a couple of times again to support the family, but not home. And I say that's I am a family man, but I think I coach people differently now.
Mm.
When they are thinking about their family, uh, you can't get that time back. And
Mm.
that's things that I know and have learned. I still feel like I did it for the family, but there are things that you can never get back. And you get one day at a time, and you don't get that other day back. And you've got
Yes.
one more ahead of you if you're lucky. And that's how you really have to that's how I look at life in regards to that. But I did what I could for my family. I love my family. So absolutely family guy. I love to cook. If we're talking
Nice.
things besides that, I've got a highly popular Instagram. I mean, it's huge. I'm big on Instagram. Uh,
Okay.
Sometime, and I cook a lot of things. I'll post pictures. I get 7, 8 likes. There's a lot of people out there that like the pictures that I share. One or two I don't even know. No, I do have a couple of people that like to look at the things that I love cooking, and yeah, so those are kind of really two important things that I want the L&M family to know, as well as that part about being an optimist. That has really driven me for the last 4 or 5 years. Probably got me to the point where I'm willing to put it out there on a podcast,
Mm.
because you have to do that with some optimism, thinking, "Hey, I'm just putting this out here," And if one person listens to me, and that's been kind of the drive of my last 4 or 5 years in my career, is how can I help people? How can I help this next generation? How can I give them stuff? And by giving them stuff, I want them to have it in, I want them to get, I just want to share, I want to help people. So that's what it comes down to. And if it's one person, that I'm fine with that. I'm good
Mm.
if there's one listener and it's my brother, because
Hmm.
I don't care. That's as long as you can help one person at a time. That's the best thing that you can do in life.
You got it, man. We can change the world one world at a time. Man, I applaud your courage there, because you and I are fellow podcasters.
Mhm.
It's a little
Right.
scary. You want everybody to love you, but you know what? Realistic. Let's set some realistic goals, and if it impacts one person, it's totally worth it. So so you're on james.gable.984 on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah. There's 980
Three?
three people apparently. I put no thought. I'm like, I'm not gonna do Instagram. I'll never do anything in there. Yeah.
Yep, yep. So I
Nine-
looked at it. It says future influencer. You're there already, so that may need an update. But I'm looking at this scrumptious
Oh yeah, that's a griddle cake right there.
griddle. What is that? Tell us,
Man,
please. 'Cause-
so I got a Blackstone. I can't tell you how many months ago that I got, and that Blackstone, it's a griddle. It's
okay.
like a 4 burner griddle, and I cooked 12 days in a row on that thing. When I got
Ooh.
it and put it together on Saturday, I cooked all 3 meals on Sunday on that thing. It's the ultimate cooking machine. But you take a biscuit, you put a little bit of butter down, you put some I rolled it in cinnamon and sugar, and then you just put it
Mm.
on that thing, and just it gets this caramely, crispy biscuit full of diabetes and whatever you want to get out of
Yes,
it.
yes.
But yeah, that's a griddle cake. I do. It's funny, and you talk. You always want feedback, right? And so uh, and it's not always going to be positive. I did these really good looking, and you can please follow me on Instagram. Be number 9 or 10 that likes that
Yeah.
picture that I put in there. But that I did some crispy tacos, I called them. So it's cheese and meat, and then I folded them over, put a little bit of oil on it, got the outside of that tortilla really crispy, made crispy tacos. And then I had several comments that what not tacos.
Oh,
It's a quesadilla.
uh,
I'm like,
yeah,
really?
the critics.
How much more do you there's only 3 or 4 ingredients in any of those ones that you're talking about.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Oh man, the taco aficionados out there are bad. You know what? You should put a poll on LinkedIn. It says description taco, yes or no. People are going crazy for polls on LinkedIn, um, and and I'm gonna say it qualifies as a taco. And I'm from San Antonio, where like
well, you're the taco.
we're the
Oh my
taco
God.
kings. Yes, Austin likes to argue that, but they're just confused. It's San
That'll
Antonio.
be that'll be a tough pull because if anybody says no to taco, they
Mhm.
might have to unfriend me. Because that's you can eat them for breakfast, you can eat them for lunch, you can eat them for dinner. I make
Exactly.
breakfast tacos. My daughter works at Starbucks, and I'll make burritos for them, breakfast burritos, bring it into their crew.
Oh,
And
nice.
then once I got the griddle, I started making breakfast tacos and bringing them in. And that's the ultimate. It's the ultimate vehicle
Yeah,
for eating food.
you very well said. The ultimate vehicle. You don't need any utensils. Just get the thing and put it in your face. Like deliciousness, easy access. 100%. So James, what's kind of standing out to me is you're just very personable, super cool, low key, relaxed. I'm wondering, and you're in the general contractor space. You have significant responsibility there, and I've been in the industry since '95, and people with your demeanor are like very, very few and far between. Uh, And so it makes me wonder, like, do you have a switch when you go to work where you got to amp it up, or do you maintain this type of easygoing, um, relatable demeanor?
I would say now I'm probably the same,
Okay.
but that's a great question because when when raising my kids, I kept work at work. So I'd come home when it came time to come home, and I tell you, you're not a man if you don't paint your daughter's fingernails. Play
Yes.
Barbies with her. She had littlest pet shops. That was her thing. And we played when we got home. My son had Legos. We played Legos when we got home. I didn't talk about work when I got home. My daughter didn't know what I did. She knew places I worked. I worked
Mhm.
at Jolly Rancher. She thought I worked at Jolly Rancher. No, I
Of
was putting in
course.
machinery there. I worked at Coors for a long time. Different places I've worked, she just associated, hey, dad made candy. I mean, she had no idea. And
Right.
that was by purpose. I didn't come home. I didn't want to bore my wife with work stuff. She knows what I do probably more than a lot of other wives as far as some interactions and stuff. But
Sure.
I don't complain about work. This is not my place. This is my safe place. So I never really talked about work at home. And when she was in high school, I had a great opportunity to get her to school before I went to Coors because they're really
Wow.
close together. So I could drop her off. She would get up early and get to school an hour early just so dad could give her a ride. Neat time. And
Hmm.
sometimes as time was pushing, my phone would ring. I'm like, hey, I got to take this phone call when I'm dropping her off. And she pointed out that's worker dad voice. Like suddenly my voice changed. And so to answer your question, yeah, absolutely. I have that a little bit different demeanor, but I mean, who I am is who I am. I think that's always how it is. But I definitely have a different home, James, than there is the work James, for sure.
That's kind of the way you got to go, but I don't imagine it's like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde transition.
I am who I am, and I think I am different in what you're talking about as far as being. I'm a general superintendent for Adolfson Peterson. They're a billion-dollar general contractor. We're in several cities. We're the largest region here in Colorado. We're a big company now. As a general soup, I'm over our itsy bitsy baby tiny small projects, 10 million and under is what we shoot for. Just the tiny stuff, but it's the small projects team, and that in its own has really helped me be who I am over the last 4 or 5 years as well too. I've been with the company because we're an entrepreneur within a big gigantic company. We started a company with the backing of $1 billion company,
Whew,
and we
yeah.
started with I was the second superintendent hired. We're the first one. Uh, couldn't he was good, but
Hmm.
he couldn't do schedules. I actually asked him, "Hey, can you do a schedule?" He goes, "Of course." He wrote it out on paper. I'm like, "Can you
Right.
use the software stuff?"
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
could not. He didn't have that ability, but he was a good superintendent. Ended up not working out, so I was really the second superintendent that got hired. And funny
Yep.
story with that, and I'm sure we use projects, Microsoft projects.
Okay.
When I was interviewed, they're like, "Hey, we did a lot of it schedule driven. How are you with schedules?" Well, I can put a schedule together. Do you use projects? Oh yeah, absolutely. So I open up my brand new computer, and it's like 2016 Microsoft projects. My
Mm.
company had been sharing a disk since 2003 was the version that I had used before. A lot of buttons got added between 2003 and
Oh
2006.
yeah.
So I YouTubed it, figured it out, and there's just more buttons to push. But poor Fred could not get the computer stuff down, so
Yeah.
he didn't
Yeah.
work out. So we started small. Hang a picture on the wall is kind of what we're saying we're going to do, and a lot of people don't expect a GC to take those small projects on. Our
Right.
goal was to take existing clients and support them, because a lot of times big projects, they move on and they're like, "Hey, we still want AP here, we want you
Yep.
guys here," and we didn't have a vehicle for doing that. We're like, "Oh, we got to move on and go build another big building."
Right.
It wasn't done with that attitude, but
Of course.
it was really a niche that we started with, and we also wanted to bring in new clients, which we have. So we really have had some kind of skyrocketing growth over the last 4 or 5 years, and that has been that entrepreneur. At one point, when we're thinking, what are we going to do next? We talked about trash kings. Like, we had a job site up north. It's a $200 million job site. There's going to be a lot of dumpsters up there.
Oh yeah.
So why couldn't we as a company find a way to, save money on the job and make money on the job?
Right.
So there's just a lot of that entrepreneurial type thing, thoughts, patterns with my boss. He is definitely a dreamer. He likes to think about what's next. Let's not do it the same way. And that's why he's been a driver for lean within our company, or
Mm.
within our group, because we're tired of doing it the same way.
Yeah.
And we have been, and that's just the thing that I've picked up on lean. We've been, lean construction's been around for like 29 years now,
Yep.
something like that. Prior to that, goes back to what, 1950 something, with the
Yep.
Toyota way, and how did that apply to construction? But for almost 30 years, we've been doing construction. You look how manufacturing changed in the same time frame, and we're still just now getting there. And
Oh
some of the
yeah.
other podcasts I listen, I think Felipe had a podcast, that, shout out to Felipe.
Yeah.
There, he had a podcast about some innovators on prefabrication. I hear about those things. We're working with some trade partners that are doing it, but we're still doing it the same way. I'm still uh, putting sheetrock and steel studs up the same way that we did it,
Hmm.
15, 20 years ago. And it's
Hmm.
time consuming and it's wasteful, and
Yes.
how do we do that in a tenant improvement area? We're in that. uh, I think we got a long way to go. And the people that are innovating and doing it are building different things than what I'm building right now, which is TIs. How can we do TIs different? So those are things that he's an innovator in making us think, how can we do it different? Because we're tired
Yes.
of doing it the same way.
Oh, and that sounds like you're in a very nurturing environment. And you described that you spent many years as a millwright, went through the apprenticeship, and worked your way into now the dark side of general contracting. Um, so now you have a boss that is a leader that supports experimentation, because sometimes those experiments don't work out, right?
That's true. Yeah,
But you
we've
learn
had
from them.
some.
Yep. So he said, so yeah, you have a bunch of them. If you're out there doing lean stuff, you have a bunch of stuff that just like womp womp womp, and that's okay because you learn from that.
Right.
Um, but through your career, how many bosses, like what's the ratio of bosses that you've had that were like nurturing and breathed life into you versus those that like sucked the life out of you?
Well, and that's a good question. You surprised me with that one. Uh, I, I would say Joe by far has been the most nurturing boss.
Okay.
He has allowed me. I came in as a superintendent, coming from industrial into general construction with really no general construction info, no general instruction. I didn't know how to. I take it back. I came in with the knowledge of general construction, but not to the level of commercial construction.
Got it.
So, I was a newbie, but I felt like I had good people skills, and I'm a quick learner. I can read drawings. Those were the things that, and this might offend some people, but when you set precision equipment to a thousandth of an inch,
Hmm.
I moved some rocket equipment, and that was, I worked at ULA or for ULA with ULA, and we relocated them from Colorado down to Decatur, Alabama. Was
Mm.
another job that I spent out of town. You set precision equipment when you're mechanically minded, and
Yep.
that's why I love about the trades, you're a problem solver. And I thought, this is just a different problem to solve. I'll take it on, and I'll learn it. Looking back, I've been doing this over 30 years.
Yep.
And if anyone knows, 30 years ago, the nurturing boss, if you said that word, you were kicked off the job. And there was not, so nurturing was, and this is really, and actually this is a great question, because how I operate, I try to be different than how I was necessarily raised. Uh,
Hmm.
but with that, I have, I don't need the pats on the back.
Mm.
So, because for me, one of the most least nurturing guys that I worked for, I learned a bunch from this guy. And this is a guy here in Colorado. He never said attaboys. If he said nothing on my job, if he walked on, my superintendent, and looked around, didn't say anything, all right, I got to go. Looks like you got it covered. That was the attaboy. That was it. So
Yep.
I don't. I'm getting better at giving those out.
Mm.
I'm recognizing people's achievement, because people want that and they need that. For me, I didn't need that. And so I had a hard time giving that out. So when you say
Yes.
nurturing was when they didn't, berate you or tell everything that you did wrong, which is
Right.
hard to do when you're a superintendent, and you got to take, and he taught me a lot. You go and you have to take a snapshot of the job, and you got to go to the next one and look at the next job that's going on. You've got a few minutes to make an assessment. So he taught me how to do that. I can go in, but what am I assessing? If you fix that, that's going to be better. This is not working over here. You need to do this over here, because you're thinking you're helping guide that guy to a better job site
Yep.
by giving him all the negative. But that's not supporting him personally
Right.
in his goal. And so that's something I've really wrestled with over the course of my career, because for the most part, not very, to answer your question, not very many what you would call nurturing.
Yep.
I didn't even know that word. Just not getting yelled at, that's nurturing.
Right.
And we're a different world now. We're not yellers. I think
Yeah.
there still are some, but there's
100%.
some that are hard line superintendents, it's their way or the highway. And guess what? They're getting jobs done. And I also found that people want some level of assertive leadership too. And that's what I've really loved doing. They want clear direction. They don't want
Yes.
what do you think? What do you think about that? They don't want that. We want boundaries. People, what do you want me to do, boss?
Hmm.
That's the mindset of me as a construction worker, is what do you want? And I'll go do it. I'll do whatever you want.
Yep. Tell me. I'm with you, man. I love it when somebody says, "Hey, let's go have dinner." I'm like, okay, good. And they say, "Meet me here at 7 p.m."
Yes.
Done.
Yeah.
When it's like, well, like, you know what? I got a pizza in the fridge. I'll save me some time. Um,
That's key right there. That happens a lot.
yeah.
Where do you want to go? What do you like? And it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, I never thought of that as a key of leadership. I need to pick more places I have plenty of places to eat. If you come out here, you won't have to choose.
Ten
How's that?
four. Yeah, let's meet here at this time. Boom, done. Let's go. Gets the ball rolling and decision making is down. I mean, it's beautiful. There's two key things that stood out to me when you were speaking. One was your experience as a millwright and the problem solving capability that you have developed as a result of doing that work and how it's transcended into a major leadership role where you're kind of inventing, creating a new business within the business. And so I wanted to highlight that for, the L&M moms and dads out there that have younglings in school, that, to help them understand it. Our industry, craft workers, trades folks, industrial arts, all of the above, creates this capability that is pretty darn profound. It's not as shiny as some of the other careers out there, which is, we're working on that. Um, but it provides immense value. I mean, I've got personal friends that they'll need help and I'll go help them out. And And they're like, man, how many times have you done that? I was like, oh, this is my first time. And they're like, what? Like, you just kind of, and it's hard for me to like articulate, right? Because you just like this podcasting thing. Shout out to Miss Stephanie Brown. She's poured a lot of positivity into me in in the way that I show up on social media. And it's I just tinker around and click on this and look at that. And if I need some extra examples, I'll go to YouTube. Um, or reach out to my contacts and say, hey, how do you do this? But it really is that kind of mindset or that ability to let's just play around with it, figure things out, and produce something that is digestible or suits somebody else's need, provides value to others.
Right.
The other thing you talked about was the fact that the person that you're with, your boss, he's a nurturing innovator, and you leaning into that. It was kind of the undertone where, you know, perfectionism can be paralyzing, or the fear of failure can be paralyzing. And in order to innovate and grow and really leverage the brain power and the spirit that we have in ourselves, we've got to be courageous and like just you're gonna get dirty, like it's gonna be okay. You can rinse yourself off. It's not a big deal. Uh, Now, on the other side of that is for leaders out there, because we got a bunch of leaders and we got a bunch of aspiring leaders out there. Uh, if you're not, it may be valuable to go and ask your people if they feel supported.
Yeah, that's a
It,
good question. Yep. Yeah.
right?
Well, and
Do
I would say I found my groove with where I'm
yes,
at right now. At 50 years old, I found what I wanted to do. I say this a lot, for a lot of years I did what I had to do. I had a family. I did jobs that I didn't like doing. I didn't like going into work. Sometimes they're tough, and you do it because you have to do it. Now I'm doing because I want to do it, which is a different mindset for me because I feel like who made me was doing all of that stuff that I had to do. And now I'm saying at the 23 years old, go do what you want to do. Well, going and doing what you're going to do might not mean working here. And that's tough for me to say that. And so let me back up a little bit and talk about how I got in the trades
yes,
because
please.
you would think, I mentioned my whole family's in it, right? You'd think it was a natural given, hey, you're going to go be a millwright. Well, it wasn't. And I was the fourth. I have three older brothers, and I was the smart one. That's what one of them calls me, anyways. But they all got into the millwrights, they got into the trades. I was going to be a music major. I had
Ah,
spent 3 quarters at a community college, just mired in doing nothing at a community college, wanting to be a music major. And my dad came to me and he said, hey, son, why don't you just take the quarter off? Take the summer off, earn some money, then go ahead and go back to school. Get in, work a little bit, earn some money.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
like 34 years ago. So I had never been
Wow,
back to college from them. But, in 88, I was making $10 an hour. That was great
that's
money.
big money.
Big money. Living at home with mom and dad, making $10 an hour. I mean, that was
Oh
great
yeah,
money. And then from there, as an assembler, I went into the apprenticeship, and then the apprenticeship, it was always that, hey, finish the apprenticeship, then go back to college. And then after that, it was, man, I'm making great. Now I got a family to
yeah,
support. I can't go to college supporting a family. And so I never had that degree. I never had the degree. But my degree was that apprenticeship, and that apprenticeship is as good as I think any,
yes,
if not better, any degree that you can get. You get out of it what you put into it, and I got a lot out of that apprenticeship time. And so I've been able to use that, and I transferred that when I came out here to Colorado. That's the best part about being in the trades too. You come out here, I had signed up at the union. I knew people. Like I didn't,
yeah.
but I did. I had a skill set that was marketable because they had taught me how to do it. And I came out here, and I worked for one company for 18 years here in Colorado until
Hmm.
they had went through some issues, and they ended up getting sold to a different company.
Okay.
But 18 years prior to that, though, I worked 12 years my first year in the trade. I worked 11 companies my next year in the trade. and then a little bit less the next couple of years as an apprentice. And then as a journeyman, I was working between 2 or 3 different companies. I worked for a lot of companies.
Mm.
And that's the experience, I think, that made me who I was, because I was so diverse. Now the issue I have is, and then I worked for 18 years for the one. I would have retired there. If that was the case, I would have just retired there. Things didn't work out that way. Now I'm with a different company, and it couldn't be better for me personally, because it's just, I've hit that groove of stuff that I love to do. But it's tough for me now to coach people to uh to get the same experience that I got. Now, it was a hard road. Like, for me to be where I'm at, there's kids right now with their construction management degree that are going to be superintendents in 5, 6 years, 7 years,
yeah.
maybe, depends. It took me 30 years to get there, or 20 years to get there, because it's that experience and that. So there is value in general contracting with that degree to be a superintendent. But how many times, and I wonder how many times you think about, did you want to just go back to work?
Oh.
Uh, and then leave it at work. Even being a foreman level, you just wish that you could. When we were in Jacksonville for that project, that was probably one of the toughest jobs I've ever worked. Me and my boss were both like, man, I just want to work at Starbucks. I just
Yeah.
want to pour coffee and go home at the end of the day. But there's yeah, you just wish you could go back to doing that, but you don't. I knew
Right.
that as an
Right.
apprentice, as part of my career development too, as an apprentice, I knew I wanted to be the lead apprentice. If we
Mhm.
had to go talk to the boss, I wanted to make sure that I was getting the work lined up for me and my partner, which
Yep.
I worked for a lot of companies that were apprentices with apprentices, because we're cheap. So if you could just do your job and follow directions, then you could do that. And then from there, I became a foreman, and being
Yep.
a foreman. So back to being an apprentice. When I was an apprentice, I wanted to be the best apprentice that I could be. I never
Yes.
had any aspirations more than that. I knew I wanted to eventually be a foreman.
Yep.
Those are just the levels at 23 years old. I'll be a foreman the rest of my life. And then you see general foreman, hit that general foreman when I came out here to Colorado. Still not really thinking about superintendent. I had a superintendent who he was on the 5-year plan. He's on it for
Mhm.
15 years now. In
Okay.
5 years, he was going to retire and hand over the keys,
Yep. This
and
is
he's
my
on his
last
50th
one.
year. So he was kind of coaching me, training me. He ended up moving on, and then I ended up taking over the superintendent job from him. He went somewhere else and gave that same speech to someone else, and then went to another company. And now I think he's down to 2 or 3 years now, 15
Yeah.
years later.
Yeah. Yep.
But I never thought, okay, well, when I hit superintendent, my first year being evaluated by my project manager he goes, what's your 5-year plan?
Mhm.
I'm like, to be a superintendent for 5 more years. I mean, I had never even thought about that next level. I just wanted to be the best that I could be at that level.
Yep.
And then you realize that really in construction, I ended up being a project manager, which in my company, that was the promotion up early. You're this, and now with, in general construction, it's a true partnership. The
Yep.
superintendent for my company is the man. And that's what drew me to being in
Mhm.
general construction. In fact, I had met with a superintendent. I had another one of my coworkers had went to work for this company, and he brought me over. So I'm like, how is it? What's it like? He's like, let me figure it out first. I don't know
Yeah.
how it
Yeah.
is yet. I'm like, it looks like you're having a great time. So when he said, come meet Brian, and I met Brian on a project, and he's a superintendent, and I'm trying to decide, do I want to be a PM or be a superintendent? And that's when I decided, I really do want to be a superintendent, because that superintendent runs the whole job, and the PM, they work on the financial side. So I made that decision, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
This is be my path, and never thought much more than that. Hey, I'll be a superintendent on a general contractor. I didn't know at the time about the small projects group. We
Right.
had started. So I'm like, I'll go build buildings. That sounds great, And from there, we grew so fast that I just was supporting the teams. We had got a bunch of work over the summer, a bunch of summer schools as super subs. That's been
Mhm.
our first market. As a gigantic general contractor, we were working for our trade partners, doing their uh,
Mhm.
concrete work, doing their grid ceilings, floor protection, stuff like that, supporting them. And so that in that supporting role as a small projects group, we just had a bunch of work, so I'm helping manage those jobs. I love doing this. We started hiring superintendents, and as that started to grow, it helped me grow into my position as general superintendent over all of our other superintendents. So it's just all kind of happened naturally. It wasn't something I didn't think when I was 23, I'm going to be a general superintendent of a gigantic company. I didn't think that way. And I think that's important to think about in your career. I think a lot of people think so far ahead that they don't focus on being great at what they're doing right now. Be the best that you can be right now. And from that, good things are going to come.
100%. And focus on serving people and building your knowledge. It's like perpetual energy, just keeps building and building. And the next step, the next level, the next experience, the next adventure reveals itself as you're going down that path. You mentioned Foreman, and we got to show love to Foreman. You and I have a similar path, right? I was like, yeah, I just want to beat every apprentice. I just want to smoke them. And right then when I got to journeyman, I just want to smoke all the journeymen. And then when I got to Foreman, I mean, to date, I've had very different roles and very significant transitions. To date, I still believe that Foreman role is the toughest position on any job site. I mean, part of what happens is, for me, and I see it a lot in Foreman when they get into the role, is I've spent the past 5, maybe 10 years being recognized and rewarded for the amount of work that I would put out, the visible work that I would put in place. And now I'm in this new stupid role that I have to fill out paperwork, and I got to go to meetings, and now I got to use an iPad or a laptop, the way things are evolving. And I can't see my work anymore because my work is no longer this tangible, visible thing. And that was a big challenge. So there's this shift in thinking that I had to make, plus the additional responsibility of doing all the company stuff. And then, you know what? Now I'm also responsible for developing people and guiding people. And like you said, providing clear direction. And nobody says, oh, you're a first-year foreman, so we're going to take it easy on you. The expectations of a foreman is that you're a 25-year seasoned freaking foreman that's an expert at everything.
Yeah, you need to know everything.
Is
the assumption, right?
That's the assumption. And so the pressures all the way around, right? The project manager, internal superintendent, the team that you're leading, the general contractor on site, the schedule, the budget, and you're learning, it's a son of a gun. And so,
and we want you to do that for $1 more an hour.
oh yes, compensation is there are some organizations that I've worked with and that I know that do a fabulous job of appropriately appreciating their foreman, but by and large they are an underappreciated role. So love to all you foremen out there, and everybody else, do better by your foreman. So man, you've got much experience, tons of experience. And I imagine through all those years of learning and coming up through as a millwright and coming into leadership, starting a new entrepreneurial business, starting a podcast, I imagine there's a bunch of learnings and missteps you've had along the way. So I'm wondering, what's a significant learning you've had as a result of like a painful, maybe even embarrassing misstep?
Yeah, I've got, and I know you asked this question, and this it's tough for everybody to pick one, right? I will say this, and I have spent a good part of my career learning from other people, and everybody needs to know that you don't have to make the mistakes, and that's what I love about this aspect of your show is let's talk about them, so I can know that, man, he goofed up big time. I'm not going to do that. And I spent a lot of my career watching foremen screw up to be a better foreman, but not saying that I haven't. And there's a couple that really stick out for me, and one is on a interpersonal level. I had an apprentice who.
Yeah, it's me again, interrupting the flow of the show. And I'm doing this just to set the hook a little bit and motivate you to sign up and become a patron of our podcast so you can become a contributor in keeping us commercial free. Y'all giving us your time and listening to this episode is extremely meaningful. If you don't have the resources, completely understand. You're giving us the most precious resource of all, which is your time and attention. But if you want to give a little bit more, hit us up, patreon.com/learnings and missteps. And I'm going to stop talking now.
I wasn't purposeful like I am now in
Mhm.
mentoring and coaching people. So
Yep.
sometimes that just happens, but that kind of went full. So that was kind of a misstep that went full circle for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
That glad that it did, because and it also, there's a lot of lessons in that too, right? Don't
Yes.
hold on to that stuff. Go,
Yes.
get it done earlier.
Yes.
I should have found them earlier and done this, but it did guide how I operate uh, my life because of that huge, gut wrenching misstep in my mind that I did
Yeah.
on a person, because you can make mistakes at work. And I'm going to tell you about one of those, but you can make construction mistakes and those can be fixed and then people
Yeah.
talk about it, right? But these type of things are deeper and
Yeah.
last longer and mean more than just putting a wall in the wrong spot.
Yep.
So my other one, I got to tell you about this one because I carried this name for a long time. We were a part of this project that we moved down to, moved ULA down to Decatur, Alabama. We were setting this one piece of equipment. There's a long story behind where it ended up, but I even had it approved by their quality department. They get a little tiny stamp, they put it out. And I mean, we followed the whole quality thing, and this thing was set per the parameters that we relocated it down there. They go to hook, and this was a rocket factory. They go and hook the rocket up, and it's, this is, I don't know, 75-foot long, rocket section. Well, if you're off by that much at the beginning, 75 feet out later, it was off
Oh,
by that.
way off. Yes.
And it ended up being, I had one of the bearings was switched on it. Anyways, I had some brackets in there that made it to about 1 7/8 inches off. So
Hmm.
my nickname became Missed It by That Much.
Oh,
I
that's
didn't shake that one. I was get smart for a long time. Missed
yeah.
it by that much. And we were called Precision Industrial, and then
Oh,
it was almost precision. I mean, it was you,
jeez.
but I'll say this, do you think I double check those things now? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Man, yeah, that's it, right? It's how, for me, my two best teachers is pain and failure. Like when I experience pain from the decisions that I've made, that sticks with me. When I fail, that sticks with me. And well, there's some that I've tested out and done the same stupid thing 4 or 5 times, but there's others that really like, okay, not going to do it again. Um, and you were talking about the gentleman that you wrote the letter on. That's another thing, back to when we were apprentices and I wanted to be a foreman, I wanted to be a superintendent, I want to be a general superintendent. I always thought that it got easier now, one thing for sure, it got easier on my body, but not easier on my psyche because you get to a point where you've got to make decisions that impact the livelihood of other human beings.
Mhm.
And that is a burden. I mean, I've done my share of corrective actions, terminating people, laying people off. And even the ones that I was like, please just quit because I'm sick of you. When I had to let them go, it was not easy. It was hard. I didn't feel good. I didn't. It's the point is there are burdens with leadership,
Yep.
and the decisions that we make impact people's lives. Period.
Yeah. Their bottom line. Can they put food
You
on
got
the
it.
table?
Yep.
Those are tough decisions. And I think that's a good point on my evolution as well, too, because being in the union, we worked a lot of outages. So guys were, I was a commodity working for my 11
Hmm.
companies that first year.
Yep.
You get hired, see you on the next one became my word. Hey, we'll see it, because there's always one more other job. So I didn't have that connection necessarily, because we knew the job ended and we went somewhere else for another
Yes.
company. and you traveled around doing that. But things change when you get more in a relationship-based company, which I am in now.
Yes.
And I look back, we've had to let some people go, and it is tough, but I look back and some of these guys are shocked. Like I've probably laid off over 300 guys. They're
Mm,
like, what? But
mhm.
it was back with the handshake. See you on the next one.
Yeah.
But I've gone through that. And I said, you know what? I've been laid off 30, 40 times
Mhm.
myself. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just part of that process. But you're right. You do get that connection when you realize, hey, I've got to let this guy go. I still stand with the idea that I have never fired anyone.
Okay.
They've fired themselves.
That's, you know what? That is a healthy way to look at it. Uh, provided that, for me, provided that I did everything I could to help that person meet or close the gap and meet the expectation. It took me a long time to learn that. When I finally figured that out, it was like, okay, here we are. It's decision time. These were the things we did. These are the resources we connected to you. This was the frank, clear communication.
Yeah.
And you have indicated that you don't have any interest in keeping this job. So I'm going to let you go. And there's been several people that after the fact were like, bro, thank you for doing that. I needed that wake up call.
Yeah. Yep.
Or one gentleman, actually, he was in Texas. He went to Dallas. I didn't terminate him, but we had a straight up conversation. And he was just very clear. He's like, you know what? Like, I don't want what the organization, the direction the organization is headed in, I'm not okay with it. So I need to make a decision. But it was a result of having direct, clear conversation. These are the rules of the game. These are the expectations, and that gave him, you know, drove him to a decision and say, you know what, I don't want to play this game. And guess what? That's okay, because you
Right.
don't have to play the game where you're at. You can go find another game to play and be
Right.
happier. And that's
Mm.
what he found. So it's not
Well,
easy, but we have to do it.
our company motto is we build people. We build trust communities and people.
Man,
We as a small projects group have used that we build people before the company took it on and added it
yeah,
in one of their three fancy sayings
yep,
from
yep.
marketing. But we build people has always been our thought. And at one point I had as the first guy I let go, now in a different environment where I'm hiring people and building their careers versus a commodity through the union, right?
Yes.
And by doing that, it was, and I had to stick with this, is for me to build him properly, he needed to go to the next contractor.
Mm-hmm.
That's he couldn't show up to work. He was late. He was there's just all these issues that we tried to address. And I'm the you're not going to interview my boss, are you?
No.
He's the I am the Mr. Too Many Chances. Yeah,
Okay.
I want to
Yep.
make sure, like, it's like I told that guy, well, how did you tell him? How did you
Yes.
have this conversation? How did you develop them? Let me have that conversation, especially with our down a couple layers
Yep.
down to or direct field guys. Like, how did you do it? What did you I want to make sure that we did everything now that we possibly could do. And then he's just, and it's never crystal clear. Like, there's no more of that just flat out, F
Right.
you, I'm out of here. It's just that slow burn of,
Mm-hmm.
you're not getting the job done and I can't pinpoint it. A lot of it is soft skills are
Yep.
so much more important than I ever thought they would have
Uh-huh.
been. They didn't teach me that, they didn't give me that in my toolbox. And
Yep.
that's one of the reasons I'm passionate about communication is nobody gave me these tools. Just go
Right.
figure it out, right? Go to work. So those soft skills are the ones that I find a lot of my guys are struggling with
Mm-hmm.
in communication, talking. You brought up the foreman thing. That's who do we typically make our foreman? The guy who communicates a little better than the
Yep.
other guy, or at least
Yep.
will look you in the eyes, right? All right,
Yep.
you're the foreman. And I did that one time. I was brand new to the company out here in Colorado 20 years ago, and I had two guys that and they gave me an outage. I was doing an outage at a glass plant, and I had to set teams up. I mean, that's what you do, right? As a general superintendent or general foreman, and so I'm just pairing up guys based on looks, or
Yep. Yep.
or my first impression, my 1 second impression, and I paired up these two guys, and I did all my talking with this one guy. Well, it turns out that other guy was a general general foreman
Mm-hmm.
for the company on these other jobs, but I didn't recognize that in him. I just went to the guy that was more communicative, and he ended up not working with the company that much longer. But those, I'm looking who's talking, so who can I
Yep.
have a conversation with to know,
Mhm.
all right, we're going to plan some workout. So how important are those skills at the foreman level?
Yep.
And I think that's why I want to promote communication through all levels. It's only going to help your career. It's going to help you stand out. It's going to help you get to that next level, because the ones that don't are the ones that are just going to stay behind and be happy turning, wrenches the rest of their life, or
Yep.
or
And
whatever.
that's okay. Like, we need that, right? I mean, I have a Fernando who I interviewed way, he was kind of the vision of the that this podcast was founded on, because he straight told me, he's like, Jesse, you always want to make me a lead man and a foreman, and I don't want that. I'm like, what? And he, of course, I had my blinders on. I'm like, well, don't you want more for yourself, and don't you want this? And he was like, when I finally like shut my mouth and listened, right? The other maybe most important part of communication is receiving messages.
Yeah.
um, I discovered that he was heavily engaged with the nonprofit organization that was doing toy drives and fan drives and food
Wow.
drive, like all kinds of stuff for a low income part of my community. I had no idea he was doing that. And so, of course, he didn't want to deal with the baggage of work. He had this other really meaningful thing going on in his life. And so I had to back off and say, okay, Fernie, like, I'm going to leave you alone, because guess what? He is adding value to our community. And I think, for leaders, that super ambitious people that, like, want to do and discover and grow and all that stuff, that's important. Don't discard the people that don't want that, because you don't know the impact that they're having in their community. And they probably have their priorities. Hell, Oscar Bustamante, OB1, super awesome guy. He's another one that I was always pressuring him to take a leadership role. He coached his kids' baseball team. He coached the soccer team. I mean, like, he amazing husband. He has a classic Chevy pickup. Like, he was in the car show. Like, he had this whole other grand, beautiful life that leadership role would steal from.
Mm-hmm.
And so not everybody places the same degree of value on leadership. And we got to honor that. We got to respect that. And this is a beautiful conversation, James. So let's do the wrap-up question. Want to know, man, what footprint do you want to leave? Do you intend to leave on the world?
Yeah, and that's the huge. Am I gonna, fund a nonprofit that feeds 8 million, 800 million people? Probably not.
Okay.
But I
Yeah,
have that
that's
in my
fair.
mind. Like
Yeah.
that, when you ask that, I feel like I should have that. But it goes down to one person at a time for me.
Mm.
And I have really found, again, my groove in helping. The story time is what my project engineers call it. Oh, it's story time. To share the knowledge and the information that I have, one
Yes.
person at a time. Am I going to stand in front of a 10,000 auditorium and preach my message of communication? Maybe, but I'm
Right.
not going to say no. But that's my goal, is still in that room, one person at a time. I want to help them help their career, help
Mhm.
them develop themselves. And as I've really have discovered, do what you want to do, which is hard for me to say, because
Yep.
what I want you to do is work for me and do the best that you possibly can, but do what you want to do, because that's what I'm doing right now. So that's really the footprint I want to leave. It's probably a small footprint, but it'd be one person at a time.
Oh my God. So did not disappoint. Here's the thing is what this is my observation. When I hear people talk about, they want to whatever, have a Lamborghini and these types of things. I think that's good. Like, that's not bad, at least, unless they're stealing it, right? But what you just said is like so profound. It's not, it's one person at a time. It's sharing the experience that you have as a human being on this planet with others to help them discover fulfillment and contentment in their life. And here's the super deep part here is the most important person is the person in front of us.
That's,
And
yeah.
And that person has a lifetime of experience and pain and knowledge that is tremendously valuable to everybody else. And so to share that is the key. All the other grand things, I believe, happen as a result of that, of sharing that. And as you already know, as you start teaching and sharing, you start discovering more about yourself, and it continues to build. So I am looking forward to sitting in that 10,000 room audience and hearing the inspirational talk you're going to have about communication, James. And this did not disappoint. Knew it was going to be awesome. Did you have fun, James?
I had a great time, Jesse. I appreciate you. Last minute, it couldn't have been better. If I had any more time to think about it, it probably would have been even worse. So I've had a great time. This has been a great conversation. You're a learner, I'm a learner, and I think those are the people that I want to partner with, and
Yes.
those are the people I want to talk to, because if you're there is part of our podcast is we're going through a book right now, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And he's got some very quotable things in there. And he's a very good negotiator, but negotiating is listening. I heard you say that too. Communication is listening. And this book is really a book about listening, listening skills, asking questions, stuff like that. But one of the things he says a lot is if you're not getting better, you're getting worse.
Mm.
And I like to use that as much as I can, because if you, and that's how true is that, right? Your skills of media.
Yep.
This is how and he does it. He's an FBI former FBI negotiator, so it's like this, right? He's Brooklyn FBI agent guy.
Yep.
But it's, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. So the minute you're not getting better, your skills are depleting. So you should be working on yourself, getting better every day. And this is what these conversations help me get better every day.
10-4. Boom. Let's wrap with that. Damn, dropping the mic. That conversation with James was like really motivating and inspiring for me. He dropped some real wisdom. And I love when people talk about the footprint they intend to leave on the world. They usually kind of say, oh, it's really not that big a deal. And then after they get to talking, it's like, man, it's the biggest deal in the world. So hit up James. Y'all need to check out his podcast, The Uncommon Communicator. Support him. There's some good stuff out there for you and your people to put into practice. And now it's time for the shout out. So we got a comment from Demographics. That's the title in the review that was left. So Demographics, all respect, my friend. And here we go. Demographics says, I just want to get to the bottom line, is that lean tool process is great. And sometimes we just get trade partners, superintendents, and foreman's personnel that don't have either a great education or no education, or never been exposed to high level, mid level, or any level of pure communication. Not saying that we just have dumb people out there at all. I'm saying is we have to understand the audience we're speaking to. I believe you are blessed with the gift to comprehend and communicate. And I think the biggest challenge is to communicate to others that don't. Demographics, I appreciate you taking the time to leave us that comment. And I want to share this. I'm going to assume that it's coming from a good place and it's your personal observation of the world. So thank you for having the courage and sharing that. One thing that I had imprinted into my mind is, if the learner hasn't learned, the teacher hasn't taught. So what that means is the onus on communication and getting the message across and transferring the knowledge lies upon me as the teacher. It's very easy for me to point the finger and say other people don't have the skill set, other people are lacking, etc. But the skill that you reference and my ability to communicate came from me really looking back at all the times that I failed to communicate, that I failed to connect, and making micro adjustments to improve that. And I did that by asking them specifically, what is it that I'm doing that is not connecting with you? And also, how can I better serve you? Those two questions have helped me tremendously And I want to share those with you, demographics, so that you can have a more fun time when you're communicating through all the pains and struggles that we have out there on the job site. Again, thank you for leaving the comment. To the rest of the L&M family out there, love y'all, and we'll talk again soon. Peace. Man, you are one dedicated listener, sticking with us all the way through to the very, very end. Please know that this podcast dies without you, and we invite you to share how the episode's impacting you, along with your thoughts, questions, and suggestions. You have been gracious with your time, so we added social media links in the show notes to make it super easy for you to connect with us. Be kind to yourself, stay cool, and we'll talk at you next time.